Hi guys, here with your final history lesson for this week. So, can I explain who was the first King of England and how they gained the title? Now we've got King Bob down here, but the clue here, it wasn't him. We need to go back into history to find out who the first King of England was. We know from our last lesson that King Alfred the Great was a good king who led his people well, but he was the King of Wessex, not the whole of England. It is said that one day, not long before he died, King Alfred called together the most important people in his court. These would have been the noblemen, the people that were really up in the top tier of society. They were rich and powerful people who could influence what went on in the country. And these would be people that the king would want to keep on side. So the court that they talk about is a bit like it's a big room where all these people would gather. They'd make decisions. They'd decide how they were going to fight the Vikings, how they were going to collect the taxes to pay for everything. So it's that kind of thing that the court would have done. Pray silence for the king. Today, I wish to give this cloak, belt, and sword to my grandson, Athelstan. Athelstan was just a child, and people were very surprised that he'd been given such a gift. He was given a cloak that was far too big for him, so it would have been on his shoulders, and at least half of it would have been crumpled on the floor behind him. He was given a sword that he wasn't strong enough to lift. And the courtiers picked up on this, the nobles picked up on this. Today, said the king, not even our people here in Wessex know your name, talking to Athelstan here. But one day, when you are tall enough to wear this cloak and strong enough to lift this sword, you will be a great king, and your name will be known throughout the land. So Alfred is setting Athelstan up to be the first king. So the name known throughout the land, it means the entirety of Britain will know Athelstan as king. So he's set a challenge, if you like, a prophecy. He's tried to predict the future. And by doing that, he's given the cloak and the sword to Athelstan and said quite clearly, when you're tall enough to wear this cloak, so by the time he's grown up big and tall, just like me, he's going to be tall enough for the cloak to fit him properly, for it not to be dragging in the dirt behind him. Strong enough to lift the sword, so to lead his countrymen into battle, to fight off invaders and make Britain a great place to live and a safe place to live. But, grandfather, I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be king. This is Athelstan talking here. He doesn't want all of this. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand. He's the same as you guys are. If someone turned around and gave you a sword and a cloak and said, one day you're going to be king or queen, but you can't do it until you're tall enough to wear the cloak, strong enough to lift the sword, I think your first thoughts are going to be, not really sure I want to do that. So the king asks, so what do you want to be? Now, Athelstan comes out with something really interesting. I just want to be me. He just wants to be himself. He doesn't want this title, this responsibility put onto him by someone, by his grandfather in this case. So it's kind of, he wants to be himself. He wants to go and find out who he is, not be told this is the path that your life is going to follow, and be checked and monitored and watched all along the way to make sure that this happens. Says the king. That is a good answer. A wise answer. You will be king, but you will always be yourself. So Alfred's saying that this path is yours. You are going to be the king one day, but you will always be yourself. So you won't be expected to be like Alfred the Great or the kings that preceded of Wessex and the different areas. He will be the first king of England or Britain. While he was still young, historians believe Athelstan was sent by his father, King Edward, the son of Alfred, to the kingdom of Mercia. There he was to be looked after by his aunt, Aethelfleda. Sorry, got my tongue twisted on that one. Queen of Mercia. Aethelfleda was strong and determined. She built castles and fortresses and led armies against the Vikings. So we can see the Vikings are still very much living in Britain, and the Britons are still trying to push them out to get rid of them. It's important to remember as well that Britain's still split into kingdoms. We've got Wessex, where Alfred the Great came from. We've got the Kingdom of Mercia, which is another area of Britain. And we've got this amazing character, a female character not often seen in history. There's very few that are recorded. You've got Joan of Arc is another one, but Aethelfleda, she was the Queen of Mercia. She was strong and determined. She led her army. This is still in a time where, I'm going to hate myself for saying this, women were seen as a bit weak, not able to do as much as the men. Obviously, we know that's not true. And women like Aethelfleda show this throughout history. They crop up. They don't get reported as often as they should because history was written by the men. So anyway, that's my little aside done. So she set a really good example. She led the armies. She built castles and fortresses. She was strong and determined. These are all good characteristics that you want in a king. You want someone that's strong and determined, that if they lose a battle, they're not going to sit in the corner and go, I'm not playing anymore. They're going to think, I need to come back. I need to find a better way of winning this war. The same as Alfred the Great did. He paid off the Vikings to leave them alone for a while. They came and attacked again, and he went and hid and built his forces. And then when they did come to the final battle, he beat the Vikings and pushed them back from his kingdom. These are all good role models in Athelstan's life. Aethelfleda was a powerful queen and also a good teacher. She taught Athelstan to love books and learning, and her warriors taught him fighting skills. Now, if you remember, Alfred, one of the things that the court said was a negative point about him was the fact that he did read, that he understood things. And now they're saying it's a positive thing. So they're teaching him to be a rounded king, so he can read and learn and study and understand how his country's going to work. He's also going to importantly need fighting skills, because at the time the king would lead the army. He'd be on the front line showing the warriors the way. So he'd need to be able to fight. Aethelfleda also taught him how to lead an army into war, and really importantly, taught him how to make peace. So we think of the Anglo-Saxon times of a time of constantly fighting and beating each other up. But actually, there's a lot to be said for someone that goes, really, what are we actually fighting over? Can we find a solution in a peaceful way? Alfred managed it by paying off the Vikings for one time. They then came to an agreement. So they made peace between the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. The Kingdom of Wessex was left alone. You had the Danelaw, where the Vikings lived, and everyone got along. They had an agreement. That's how peace works. The two sides that have a disagreement come together. There might be a battle, there might not be, but at the end of it, the problem gets resolved. Athelstan grew up to become a strong and wise young prince. When his father, Edward, died in 924, Athelstan became king of both Wessex and Mercia, and many called him ruler of all England. So he's starting to bring the different kingdoms of Britain back together, or together for the first time, in fact. So we've got the idea, he's collecting all the different kingdoms, bringing them together, and he's starting to get the name as ruler of all England. So we have our king. My lords, we have a long struggle ahead of us before I or anyone can claim to be king of all England. I have tried hard to make peace across the land, but there are those who still want to fight. An army led by Constantine of Scotland is massing in the north. Scots, Irish, and Vikings are joining together to attack us. My lords, we will go to meet them and we will defeat them. So we can see from this speech, Athelstan has tried to make peace with everybody, tried to get everybody to agree this is how we're going to live our lives. Now, Constantine doesn't like the idea. So he's bringing together all the people that don't like this, that want to fight against it. When he's saying to go and meet them, we're talking about a battle, men fighting against men, weapons and everything else, and we will defeat them. So he's looking to beat them and take the land himself. Athelstan's army met the forces led by Constantine at a place called Brandenburg in 937. The battle lasted for 2 days, and at the end, Athelstan was victorious, but many had died on both sides. After the battle, the king comes forward. We have won the battle. It is time to weave the peace. So the bloodshed and the war is over. Now is the part of picking everything up, putting it all back together in a way that promotes peace across the land. Athelstan became a great king. He helped the poor and passed laws to make the kingdom safer. He built churches and monasteries. He promoted learning and had the Bible translated into English. It's important to remember that the Bible at this time was written in Latin, and Latin was the language spoken by the Romans who had left some time ago. And it was a way of the church being able to maintain some sort of control over the common person by them being the only ones that could read Latin. So by translating the Bible to English, it enabled those that could read in England to start to read the words that were written in that Bible. Most importantly, he started to bring the kingdom together. He invited leaders from all over the land to meet with him, and they came. A kind of peace was created, and Athelstan had become the first true king of England. So he sat down with all the leaders of the different tribes all around Britain and England. He sat down with the kings of the various areas and brought everyone together and has become the first true king of all England. So his grandfather's prophecy that by the time you're grown, strong enough to carry a sword, tall enough to wear the cloak, your name will be known up and down the country, you will be king, has come true. And reading through this and talking you through this, it's very clear to me that he's done it his way. He's been himself. So moving forward, your task, using the information from the lesson today, can you answer the following questions? So what you might need to do, write the questions down in your book or on your piece of paper, go back, re-listen, reread, re-watch, and pick up your answers as you go through. So our first question, what relation was King Alfred to Athelstan? What were the 3 items given to Athelstan by Alfred? Aethelflaeda was the queen of where? Question 4, who leads the armies of the north? Question 5, which 3 groups made up the army from the north? Question 6. Now, this is one that's going to allow you to think about it. So you want to put yourself in the shoes of Alfred the Great. Why do you think "I just want to be me" was a good answer in the eyes of Alfred? So it needs you to think about what you're going to do. So good luck with your tasks. I look forward to seeing the answers up on Tapestry later. Take care, stay safe. As always, we'll see you again soon.